probably, once we have those members in, go right into executive session and knock out the 4 bills we have there as quickly as we can. And then I'm going to lose like all of my committee today for bills. So it's going to be kind of odd, people coming in and out. So just so everybody knows, but we'll start in subcommittee, and we will start with Senator Eslinger's bill. Good morning, Senator, and proceed when you're ready.
Morning. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I still sound a little bit bizarre, but feel great, and I appreciate the opportunity to present my bill.
I'm sorry, Senator. I told Senator Bean I'd let him introduce his shadows today. I totally forgot. I just told him that he could do that. If you don't mind me interrupting
Well,
you.
would Senator Bean please?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we've got Gannon and Mitchell with us today from Thayer High School, and they're going to shadow me all day today, and I'm really sorry for that. But if everybody could just welcome them, I would appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I also have a couple shadows too while we're on the subject. Elena and Chrissy over here, they've joined us here in the back, but they're shadowing us today as well. And so it's, I guess, a bunch of students in here today doing a shadow with FCCLA. But sorry, Senator, I apologize about that.
I'll take advantage of the opportunity. If you happen to see Samantha, Trinity, or Olivia, they're shadowing me as well. So it's always a good day when you bring kids in the Capitol. So appreciate it. Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the opportunity to bring before you Senate Bill 206. It's modifying qualifications for fire protection employees. For the record, Carla Eslinger, I represent the 33rd Senatorial District. This bill would basically just modify provisions that are relating to qualifications for fire protection employees. And as you have heard so many times, but really and truly it is a very simple bill. It will make changes to the residence requirements for investigators and give the Missouri Fire Marshal's office and their staff the ability to set the qualifications for investigators, which allows them to broaden the scope and align those qualifications to the job they're asked to do. The bill will make changes to the residence requirements for investigators. Current state requires that before you can be hired as a fire marshal or before you can be hired, you have to be a tax-paying resident of the state of Missouri for 3 years. This limits the ability of the state fire marshal to recruit good candidates from across the nation, but also those that could possibly be serving in parts of Missouri but just be located right across the border. This legislation would change the language to say that they must be a resident at the time of their appointment. Second, this bill will allow the Missouri Fire Marshal's office to basically just set the qualifications for investigators. Under current statute, it establishes minimum qualifications that must be met for someone to become an investigator. Despite the changes in how we combat fires and how we run the fire marshal's office over the past couple decades, this particular statute has not been changed since 1985. So it is time for us to look at this and be able to make some recommendations and changes that's going to allow our fire marshal to do the job we ask him to do. Thank you again for providing me the opportunity to present my bill. I won't torture you anymore with my lovely voice. And we have our wonderful state fire marshal here with us, Tim Bean, and he will be able to testify and be able to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I'm going to interrupt one more time because we're going to take attendance and then we're going to go in executive session. We'll knock that stuff out because Senator Bean and Brown have bills to present. So, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Here.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
Quorum being established, we'll go into executive session. I make a motion to move into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. I move that Senate Bill 139 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I have a second before the committee. I move that, I'm sorry, we need to go pull that bill up. We don't have 139. I'm sorry, 139 isn't a bill that's before executive session. Is that one of yours? So I'm going to bring up Senate Bill 38. Do I have a second on Senate Bill 38? I move that Senate Bill 38 be brought up. I have a second. The bill's before committee. This is Senator Williams' post standards for law enforcement officers. There is a substitute. Did everybody have access to the substitute? That was all language that was worked out through Senator Williams' office. and the officers and the associations that were involved. It's all agreed upon language. Any discussion on that? All right, I move that we adopt the substitute. Having a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. You've adopted the substitute. I now move that we vote do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 38. Any discussion? You have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 4-0, you have voted do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 38. I now move that we bring up Senate Bill 46. Having a second, Senate Bill 46 is before us. This is Senator Gannon's bill on first responders. I do have a substitute for that is a little bit different than the underlying bill. I need to. I moved to the sub, right? I move that we adopt the substitute. Any discussion? Oh, do I need a second for that? I have a second. All right, so the sub is before us. The substitute changes it to goes beyond first responders, and it includes Jefferson County, which the Senator Gannon has asked me to do, to allow Jefferson County to. It adds for Senate Bill 608, which allows Jefferson County to tax in the same way every other county in the state taxes. There was an effort by, I guess, Senator Whelan years ago to remove that, and then she wants to reinstitute the way that every other county has the ability to tax. And so I said we'd bring up the substitute. You should have gotten that emailed to you. So any discussion on the substitute? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. You've adopted the substitute. I now move that we vote do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill number 46. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 4-0, you voted do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill number 46. I now move that Senate Bill 167 be brought up before the committee. Do I have a second? Having a second, the bill is before the committee. We heard this bill last week. It's Senator Brown's, both Senator Browns, I think, or Senator Brown's and Beans. Hoskins. I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't figure that out. It's the CDL. It makes it, somebody else may need to take over for me here. It's the CDL, making it easier to get CDL health forms. Do I have any discussion on that? We do have a substitute that combines Senator Hoskins and Senator Brown's bill. Senator Brown, or Ben Brown. Brown from Franklin. He's going to go first because Senator Hoskins agreed to have Senator Brown carry the combined bills. So Senate Bills 167 and 171, that's the substitute, just combining the two identical bills. Any discussion on the substitute? I move that we adopt the substitute. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion on the substitute? Any more discussion on the substitute? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I now move that Senate committee substitute for Senate Bills 167 and 171 be voted do pass. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bills 167, 171. I now move the last one we're going to do is Senate Bill 216. I move we bring that up in committee for discussion. Do I have a second? I do have a second. That bill's before the committee. I move that we do pass Senate Bill 216. This is Senator Roberts naming bill that we heard 2 weeks ago, non-controversial, just names another highway. It's actually in the Senate substitute for, I believe it's in the Senate substitute for Senator Thompson Rader's upcoming Senate Bill 127 on the Senate floor. So we've considered this. Any discussion on the bill? Hearing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater, Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted to pass Senate Bill 216. That will conclude our executive session. Do I have a second to move out of executive session? Second. So we are out of executive session. We'll go back into the hearing. Thank you, senators, for your patience with me today. Been all over the place. Senator, we're back on your.
Okay, so I think we're at the point where if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for the sponsor? Hearing none. First witness to testify in favor of Senator Eslinger's bill. Come on up and make sure you fill out a witness form for our records, please, and begin when you're ready.
Good morning. I'm Tim Bean, the State Farm Marshal, and I'm here to support this bill. Thank you, Senator Eslinger, for bringing this up. We've had issues in the past because of the statute that restricts someone has to be living in our state for 3 years before they can apply as a fire investigator. So this language would remove that restriction of 3 years. And also the second piece to this is secondary employment is also part of that statute, and we'd like that also removed so that our employees could have secondary employment.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify in favor of the bill? Anybody here to testify in opposition to the bill? Anybody here to testify for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing on your bill, Senator. Thank you for your time. Any closing remarks?
Nope, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Senator Luetkemeyer's bill here in a second when he comes in from approps.
I'll go get him. Why these chairs are so hard.
I have no idea what's happening with this. So we're on Senate Bill 191. Senator Luetkemeyer, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, representing the 34th Senatorial District, Platte and Buchanan counties, here today to present on Senate Bill 191, which makes some changes regarding the state law surrounding the disclosure of engineering estimates. An engineering estimate holds MoDOT's design team accountable for the value and cost of a project. When determining an award, the engineer's estimate provides transparency. Sometimes when a project is not awarded, contractors are not told it was over the engineer's estimate, but contractors are never told the amount of that estimate. And so many times MoDOT has not had an accurate engineer's estimate, and so the contractors are unduly punished and have to rebid. So this change would ultimately reduce the cost of bidding and encourage more bidders, and ultimately reduce the cost of projects as actual bids and projections better reflect market reality. And Mr. Chairman, just for the benefit of the committee, this bill did previously pass the Senate as a part of an omnibus transportation bill. That bill was ultimately vetoed by the governor a couple of years ago. My understanding, just after having some conversations with folks in the governor's office, is that even though this provision was mentioned in the veto letter, the other provisions in the bill are what resulted in the veto. And I believe if we pass this again, that this would be signed into law. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the sponsor? Hearing none, thank you, Senator, for your testimony on your bill. Anybody here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 191? Please proceed when you're ready, and please fill out a witness form.
We're here to testify in support of the bill today. Senator Luetkemeyer said the
Any questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in favor of the bill? Proceed when you're ready. Great. Questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you. Anybody else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 191? Anybody here for opposition? Anybody here for informational purposes only? Please make sure you fill out a witness form and proceed when you're ready. Questions for this witness? Hearing none. Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here for informational purposes only? That will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 191. We're now going to go to Senator Bean and his Senate Bill 264. Senator, proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Jason Bean, representing the 25th District in Southeast Missouri. RATBAC is a state and federal notification system that is best described as a constant background check. If the status of an individual has changed, that's to say if an individual is arrested or fingerprinted and they are enrolled in RATBAC, the individual's employer will be notified of an arrest. With the passage of HB 1350 in 2018, Missouri became the third participating state in the RATBAC program. The purpose of my bill is to eliminate a 6-year refingerprinting requirements for entities participating in the RATBAC program. It will also prevent an applicant or entity from incurring additional fingerprint fees required at the time of refingerprinting to be re-enrolled in RATBAC. This is a sensible policy that will help our overburdened agencies remove one more administrative task from their to-do list. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. We're just going to go to your witnesses. Witnesses in favor, and proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Lieutenant Colin Stosberg with the Missouri State Highway Patrol, here to testify in support of Senate Bill 264. Missouri was the only state that, when this was passed, that had the 6-year re-enrollment requirement, and we're just going to remove that. It's a customer service bill. It'll save school districts and all these other entities money from having to re-enroll here in 2 more years. It's been a successful program to date. We've had over 8,000 hits in the program, and there are currently 931 agencies currently enrolled in state and the federal RATBAC program. With that, I'll take any questions.
Have we passed this a bunch of? It feels like we passed this a bunch of times. It feels
So
like we get
RATBAC
this every year.
2018.
I'm sorry if I've missed it.
No, yeah. So when they passed it in 2018, you probably were on the other side of the building.
Yeah.
We were the third state to pass it, and there was some amendments done the following session just to clean up. And this is hopefully our last and
Okay.
best policy to remove that 6-year.
Right. I've always supported it. I just,
Sure.
it feels like we have a
Right,
new one every
yeah,
year.
sure.
We're like, oh, we got to do it again, which is fine. It's great. Any further questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other witnesses to testify in support?
Mr. Chairman, approval on behalf of the Missouri Association of School Administrators. As the previous witness said, this should result in a savings for school districts. It would also result in a savings for teachers. So I hope that you guys look favorably upon the bill, and I look forward to the bill signing.
Great. Questions? Hearing none, thank you. Any further testimony in support?
Good morning. There we go. My name is Hallie Herbert. I'm the legislative liaison for the Department of Public Safety. I'm just here in support of Senate Bill 264, removing the 6-year re-enroll requirement for Missouri's RAP Back program will ensure the safety of the entities and the people in the program. Thank you.
Questions? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Any further support?
Mr. Chair, Senator Eigel, Wes Sutton, Legislative Director, Missouri Division of Professional Registration, going on record in support. Many of our boards and commissions would like to join the RAP Back program, but we have found that the 6-year requirement has kind of been a barrier for them. So we are in support of the change.
Questions? Hearing none, thank you
Thank
for
you.
testimony. Further support for the Senate bill? Any opposition to Senate Bill 264? Any for informational purposes only? Hearing none, that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 264. Senator, you have any closing thoughts? Thank you, Senator. We'll now go to Senator Eigel's bill, Senate Bill 317. Senator, begin when you're ready, and glad we finally got to this one.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm State Senator Bill Eigel. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Senate Bill 317, which establishes the Interstate 70 Improvement Fund, which would be used solely by the Highways and Transportation Commission for the purpose of completing and widening or otherwise improving and maintaining Interstate 70. Now, Mr. Chairman, as a brief overview, of course, we have looked at different ways of trying to rebuild or expand our state's largest highway for many years, and we haven't had a vision or a plan to do that, and that's what I'm trying to provide in Senate Bill 317. Specifically, under the filed version of the bill, what it would do, it would set aside certain revenues and certain amounts of our surplus, which we currently have in the state of Missouri, to rebuild I-70. Specifically, it would take 2% of our general revenue collections annually to deposit them into the fund. We expect that that would be over 8 years, which is the horizon that we're expecting I-70 would take to be rebuilt. On January 1st of each year, in addition to that, any money in the general revenue fund in excess of $4 billion would be deposited into the fund as well. So this is an assumption of if there is an amount, if we continue to see these surpluses, the idea is we want to continue using some of those surpluses above a certain amount, because we certainly have other needs in the state, to deposit in that fund and go towards the ultimately the widening of the project. Now, I know that the governor came out and proposed spending, I want to say, around $880 million in his budget to repair the highway and do certain widening projects. I think that is probably not as expansive as what we would see under the aspects of this particular bill. In some conversations offline and outside of this hearing, Mr. Chairman, I think that you and I have been a part of, I think that a solution that gets us to a place to where we could see Interstate 70 expanded to 3 lanes in either direction between St. Charles and Blue Springs is a solution that would be the most encompassing and most likely to happen. To do that, we would still need a fund that we could appropriate excess surplus dollars into to avoid those dollars from being politicized in future years. If we just try to use dollars directly out of the general fund, then the next year those funds have to go through the reappropriation process. You may end up having the same conversation over and over, which will make it very difficult for MoDOT to focus and plan ahead. So I think the creation of the fund under this bill is going to be required regardless of which solution we ultimately end up going with. If we want to try to dedicate certain revenues to that effort, I think that's a conversation we can have, and we've got different ways we can do this under the bill. However, depending on how much we ultimately decide to appropriate to this effort, we may not need to set aside certain future funds, but we're certainly going to need the fund that we can put the dollars into. And with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
You've been on approps before. Could you set up the fund through appropriations? I don't know the answer. So if so you wouldn't necessarily need the bill if you just said, hey, we're already planning on appropriating all these funds to expand 70 maybe in this budget year.
Well,
budget year.
if you don't have a fund to put them in, and the fund would have to be created by a new statute, then they would just, even if you set aside the dollars from the general revenue fund, if you didn't spend them in those 12 months of that budget year, they would just get rolled back into the overall conversation, which would get tied up in the next year's fiscal conversation. So it's unlikely, and I'll just put a scenario out there, if we wanted to appropriate $1 billion out of say a $3 billion project, it's unlikely they could spend that $1 billion in the first 12 months. And then when they didn't, it would lapse and go back just into the regular budget fund. And then we'd have to have another political conversation. Well, we got to get those funds back in there. And it just kind of sets it aside. If you put them into a dedicated fund, you avoid that political conversation from happening over and over with each fiscal year.
That makes sense. And, I think both you and I agree as St. Charles representatives that that I-70 is just a massive priority for a multitude of reasons. So I was excited to get this bill weeks ago to figure out how do we have this conversation. This is before, we even talked about this before the governor announced all of his money, and then what we talked about in appropriations and how we fix I-70, expand it. So look forward to this conversation ongoing, and I'm really excited about where we're at because I think the best use of our dollars is spent on infrastructure as opposed to new programs. So,
and Mr. Chairman, I would just add that in your district, the #1 bottleneck in the state of Missouri is what I call the Wentzville Strangler. I've been referring to it as, and I have sat in that traffic jam many times.
Don't come down 64 on a Friday night and try to get on 70. It takes a really long time.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator. Seeing no further questions from the committee, anybody here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 317? Proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri. I want to be on record in support of this, not to the exclusion of any other plans. We think and all of the above strategy should be in play here. Certainly support fixing I-70. And we like the governor's plan. We like the ability of having a special fund for a couple of reasons. One is if it's a special fund that's outside of the regular highway trust fund where all the fuel tax money goes, that gives you as legislators more control over that money, which is a good thing when you're talking about wanting to dedicate it to a purpose like I-70. Make sure that you can control that money is going there and nowhere else. So for those that want to have a little more control over maybe how MoDOT operates, this is a way to do it in a controlled way that makes sure if you put this money toward I-70, it's going to go for I-70 and not for raises or some other purpose. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you for your testimony. Hearing no questions.
Thank you.
Further testimony in favor of Senate Bill 317. Please leave witness forms also for our records.
Mr. Chairman, board members are? No. But, Mr. Chairman, my name is Pat Kelly. I'm Executive Director of Municipal League Metro St. Louis. We're going to go on record in support of the bill. The League has a longstanding position of supporting the investment in infrastructure throughout the state of Missouri. For those of you who don't know, one of the fastest growing industries in the St. Louis region is the St. Louis Freightway, which is the logistics of the coordination of all the logistics and distribution in the St. Louis region, including rail, barge, and freight throughout the state. And the Highway 70 is a key component to that, the future of that industry, not only for the St. Louis region, but for the state of Missouri. We look at this as an investment in economic development for the future of the state. So we'd like to go on the record in support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 317? Anybody here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 317? Anybody here for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing. Senator, you have any closing remarks?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Well, that will conclude the hearing on transportation, infrastructure, and public safety for today. Thank you all.